It was a gloomy Thursday afternoon, one of those days where the rain doesn't seem to know when to stop, and everything feels heavy. I was heading home after a long day at work, my thoughts tangled in everything I still had to do, when I saw him. There he was, sitting alone at the bus stop, drenched to the bone. His clothes stuck to his skin, and he looked like he had been sitting there for hours, probably waiting for a bus that would never come. In his hands was a book, well-worn and a little tattered, as though it had been his companion for longer than any of us could know. I could see the exhaustion in his posture, the way he slouched forward, and the sadness in his eyes. Something about him made me pause. I should have walked by, kept my head down and ignored the stranger, just like I did with most people. But there was something in his stillness that called to me, a vulnerability that tugged at my heart. Without even thinking, I found myself standing in front of him. "Hey, you're getting soaked. Need a ride?" I asked, feeling the awkwardness of a random offer, but I couldn't just leave him there. He glanced up, meeting my eyes with an unreadable expression, and for a second, I thought he'd turn me down. But then, after a long pause, he nodded. "Sure. Thanks." That was the start. It didn't seem like much at the time. A simple act of kindness, a quiet moment of connection. But looking back now, I know that ride would be the first of so many that would change my life in ways I could never have imagined. The ride was silent at first. He sat in the passenger seat, eyes glued to the rain hitting the windows, as if the world outside held more meaning than the one inside the car. I didn't press him for conversation. Sometimes, people just need silence, and I respected that. He told me his name was Eli, and that he lived in a small apartment not far from the city center. I didn't ask too many questions, he didn't seem the type to offer much about himself right away. Instead, I just focused on the road, letting the quiet settle between us. When I dropped him off, he gave me a quiet, but genuine, "Thanks again." And with that, he was gone. That was supposed to be the end of it. I didn't expect to see him again. He was just a stranger, after all, and I had my own life to focus on. But fate, it seems, had other plans. A week later, I ran into Eli again, this time at a bookstore. I was browsing through the photography section when I saw him, standing by the LGBTQ+ memoirs, holding a book that looked like it had been read cover to cover. The same look of quiet sadness was on his face, but this time, there was a flicker of something different, something I hadn't noticed before. Maybe it was the familiarity of seeing him again, or maybe it was the way his presence felt like it had always been there. I walked up to him and tapped him on the shoulder. "Rainy day guy." I joked, feeling the awkwardness of the moment, but wanting to break the ice. He turned, and when he saw me, his face softened just a little. A hesitant smile tugged at the corners of his lips. "Hey," he said, as if we had been friends for years. I smiled back. "Fate must really want us to meet, huh?" He laughed lightly, the sound almost foreign but warm. "Maybe. Or maybe we just can't avoid bookstores." We ended up sitting down for coffee. Neither of us had planned on it, but the conversation just flowed, naturally. We talked about everything and nothing, our favorite books, the best coffee shops in town, and the strange ways people connect. He talked about how he loved writing poetry, and I admitted I had a hobby of amateur photography. It was easy, comfortable, like we had known each other for much longer than we really had. And just like that, something sparked between us. The night we shared our first kiss was unexpectedly perfect. It was one of those cold nights where you could feel the promise of winter in the air, and we were curled up on his couch watching an old French film that neither of us had seen before. Neither of us spoke much, just taking in the quiet moments together. When the movie ended, he looked at me with those eyes of his, the ones that always seemed to be holding back something. "I think I like you," he said, his voice barely above a whisper. "And that scares me." I could feel the weight of those words. He had been hurt before, that much was clear. He didn't trust easily, but in that moment, I knew what he was saying. He was offering me a piece of himself, fragile and broken, and he was scared I'd break it too. I reached out, gently touching his cheek. "I think I like you too," I whispered back, before leaning in to kiss him. It was gentle at first, hesitant, but when he kissed me back, everything shifted. The air between us thickened with a quiet promise, a promise that no matter what, we were going to make this work. We were going to figure it out together, even if it meant facing things neither of us was ready to face. Eli had been disowned by his parents when he was 17. When he came out to them, they didn't just reject him, they turned their backs on him entirely. It was a pain that ran deep in him, something he carried quietly, always hidden behind that facade of calmness and grace. He'd lived on his own ever since, a young man trying to survive in a world that never seemed to have space for him. But with me, he found something he hadn't had in years, a place where he could breathe, where he didn't have to hide. Slowly, as the days turned into weeks, and the weeks turned into months, Eli began to open up to me. He let me in, piece by piece, showing me the man behind the pain. And I fell for him, harder than I ever thought I could. As the weeks passed, Eli and I grew closer, each day revealing something new, something beautiful about him that I hadn't noticed before. His quiet strength, the way he would take long walks to clear his head, or how he always carried a notebook with him, scribbling down thoughts and ideas whenever inspiration struck. I admired the way he could turn even the simplest of moments into poetry, capturing the essence of things most people overlooked. He had this ability to find beauty in the ordinary, a trait I envied, yet found myself drawn to. But beneath it all, there was a constant undertow of sadness, a shadow he couldn't shake, no matter how bright our moments together became. There were times when I would catch him staring into space, his eyes distant, lost in memories that I couldn't reach. When I asked him about it, he'd always brush it off, saying it was just the weight of the past that lingered in his mind. He never shared the full extent of what had happened with his family, and I didn't press him. I knew that when he was ready, he would tell me. But as much as he opened up to me, there was always a piece of him that remained hidden, locked away from the world. It wasn't until one late evening that the truth came rushing out, unbidden and raw. That we were sitting on his balcony, the city lights twinkling below, a cool breeze sweeping through the air. It had been one of those evenings where everything felt perfect, quiet, still, and intimate. We had just finished dinner, and I could feel the weight of unspoken words hanging between us. I didn't know why, but something told me tonight would be different. Eli was silent, his gaze fixed on the horizon. I sat beside him, waiting for him to speak, knowing that when he was ready, he would. After a long pause, he turned to me, his eyes searching mine as though weighing something in his mind. "There's something I need to tell you," he said, his voice low and steady, but with a tremor I hadn't heard before. "Something I should have told you sooner." I felt my heart tighten in my chest. I didn't know what he was about to say, but the way he was looking at me made it clear that this was important. He sighed, rubbing his temples, as if trying to summon the strength to speak. "I wasn't always like this. The way I am now. The quiet, the sadness, it wasn't always my reality." I nodded, urging him to continue. I had no idea what he was talking about, but I could tell this was something deep, something that had shaped him in ways I couldn't yet understand. "I came out to my parents when I was 17, he began, his voice barely above a whisper. I didn't know how they'd react, but I thought they'd understand. I thought they'd accept me for who I am. But I was wrong." His eyes drifted downward, and I could see the pain in them, the kind of pain that only comes from betrayal, from losing everything you thought you had. "They disowned me. Told me I was no longer their son. It didn't matter how much I begged or how many times I tried to explain myself. They said I was a disappointment, that I was ruining their lives by being who I am." I could see his hands shaking slightly as he spoke, the anger and hurt still raw. It was clear that this was something he had carried with him for years, something that hadn't healed with time. "They told me they couldn't love me anymore. That they couldn't accept the freak I had become. And that was it. They turned their backs on me, just like that. I was left with nothing. The weight of rejection." There was a heaviness in the air, an almost suffocating silence that followed his words. I didn't know what to say at first. What do you say to someone who has been rejected by the people who were supposed to love them unconditionally? Instead, I reached out and took his hand in mine. It was a small gesture, but I could feel the weight of his sadness in that simple touch. I didn't want to say anything that might trivialize what he had been through, so I just let him continue when he was ready. "I moved out after that," he said, his voice a little more distant now, like he was losing himself in the memories. "I didn't have anyone. No family, no real friends. Just a few strangers who helped me get by. But even when I started building my life, I couldn't shake the feeling that something was missing. I couldn't shake the feeling that I wasn't good enough. That I wasn't wanted." His eyes met mine, and I could see the vulnerability there. It was the first time I had ever seen him so open, so raw. I tried to fill the void in other ways, with people, with things. But it never worked. Nothing ever worked. Until I met you. A love reborn. His words hit me like a wave, crashing over me with such force that I was momentarily overwhelmed. The idea that someone who had been through so much pain, so much rejection, could still find space for love was both heartbreaking and beautiful. It was a testament to his strength, to his capacity to heal, even when the world had done everything it could to break him. I didn't expect to find someone like you, he continued, his voice softening. You've shown me what it feels like to be loved again. To be accepted. And for that, I'm grateful. More than you'll ever know. I didn't know how to respond to that. All I could do was pull him into a hug, holding him close as though I could somehow shield him from the pain of his past. He buried his face in my shoulder, and for a moment, we just stood there, wrapped in each other's embrace, the world around us fading away. But I knew, deep down, that this wasn't just about me comforting him. It was about us finding something in each other that we hadn't had before. A safe space to be ourselves, to let go of the masks we had worn for so long. And in that moment, I knew that no matter what the future held, I would always be there for him. We would face it together. After that night on the balcony, something shifted between us, not in a dramatic, earth-shaking way, but in those quiet, deep undercurrents that change everything without a sound. Eli had let me into the most sacred part of his pain, and I held it like something fragile and priceless. Our bond, already strong, became something deeper, something unspoken and powerful. We started doing more of the small things that make up a life together. Sunday mornings meant pancakes, jazz records, and 2 mugs of black coffee. Wednesday evenings became grocery runs that turned into dance-offs in the produce aisle. There were nights when we stayed up watching old movies, him curled into my chest, both of us half awake but completely at peace. But with the joy came the inevitable shadow of reality. Eli had always struggled with anxiety, but now I could see it clearer, especially in the silences. Sometimes, he'd freeze up during a perfectly normal day. He'd sit in one spot for hours, staring out the window with that faraway look. There were times I found him in the shower, water running cold, eyes closed, breathing carefully like he was trying not to shatter. I learned quickly not to force anything. Instead, I'd bring him tea. I'd light a candle. I'd put on his favorite record. And slowly, always slowly, he'd return to me. That it was late October when the unexpected happened. I was cleaning up after dinner, Eli on the couch sketching something in his notebook, when his phone buzzed. He checked it casually at first, but I noticed the way his whole body tensed as he read the screen. He stood up without a word and walked straight into the bedroom, closing the door behind him. I didn't follow. I gave him his space, but my chest buzzed with worry. A few minutes passed. Then 10. Then 20. Finally, I knocked gently. Eli. He opened the door just enough for me to see his face, pale, shaken, his eyes damp. My dad, he said, barely a whisper. He called. I blinked. Your dad. He said he wants to talk. The words hung in the air like smoke, impossible to grasp. After everything, years of silence, disownment, bitterness, his father had reached out. What do you think he wants? I asked gently. Eli shook his head. I don't know. Maybe he's sick. Maybe he feels guilty. I don't know what to do. That night, Eli sat on the floor of our bedroom, back against the bed, notebook forgotten. I joined him quietly, sitting cross-legged across from him. He started speaking, his voice soft but steady. He wasn't always like that, you know. My dad. When I was little, he used to take me fishing every summer. Just the 2 of us. He taught me how to tie a knot, how to cast a line. And every time I caught a fish, he acted like I just won the lottery. I smiled. He sounds like he loved you. He did. Or at least, I thought he did. Eli looked down at his hands. Until I told him who I really was. He paused, then looked up again. Do you think people can change? I think they can try, I said honestly. And sometimes, that's all we get, a chance. The next morning, Eli called him back. They talked for less than 5 minutes. Eli came back into the living room afterward, his eyes dry but darker somehow. He didn't cry. He didn't speak for a while. Just sat beside me on the couch. He wanted to say he was sorry, he said eventually. He said he regrets everything. That he didn't know how to handle it back then. Did you believe him? I asked. Eli shrugged. Part of me did. But part of me still hears the words he said the day he kicked me out. And I don't know if I can just forget that. I didn't push. I just took his hand. That week, Eli spent a lot of time walking alone. He'd leave in the morning with his camera or notebook and wander through the parks, the neighborhoods, the places he used to avoid. He said he was finding pieces of himself again. And it showed. He started smiling more. Laughing deeper. He started leaving love notes for me hidden in books, in drawers, on the bathroom mirror. The kind that made my heart ache in the best way. But that peace didn't last. It was a Sunday afternoon. Rain tapped softly on the windows, and Eli had just come home from one of his walks. He was soaked, shivering, but smiling. "You wouldn't believe the leaves near the lake," he said, brushing water from his hair. "It's like the trees are on fire." I grabbed a towel and wrapped it around his shoulders. He kissed my cheek and went to change. 10 minutes later, he collapsed in the hallway. I heard the thud. My feet moved before I could even think. I found him on the floor, barely conscious, his breathing ragged and shallow. "Eli. Hey, stay with me, okay?" I called 911. My hands shook as I explained, as I held him, as the seconds dragged on like hours. In the sterile cold of the hospital, I sat under the harsh glow of fluorescent lights, staring at the double doors where they'd taken him. Time felt suspended, unreal. I couldn't stop shaking. I couldn't stop praying. The doctor came out after what felt like forever. "He's stable now," she said. "But we need to run more tests." "Has he had any previous seizures?" I shook my head. "No. Nothing like this." She nodded. "Okay. We'll keep you updated. He's asking for you." When I walked into the hospital room and saw him lying there, pale and wired up to monitors, my chest caved in. I sat beside him, holding his hand. "I didn't mean to scare you," he whispered. "Don't say that. You scared the hell out of me. I've been feeling tired for weeks. I thought it was stress. I didn't want to worry you." "You have to tell me these things," I said, voice trembling. "You don't get to keep things like this from me." "I know," he whispered. "I'm sorry." He stayed in the hospital for 5 days. They ran every test they could think of. Neurological, cardiovascular, blood work. I barely left his side. I read to him. I held him through the nights when he couldn't sleep. I sat in silence with him when words felt too heavy. When the results came back, the doctor's face gave everything away. "We found some abnormalities," she said gently. "There's something in his brain scans that concerns us. We're referring him to a specialist." Eli didn't say anything. He just nodded. Then reached for my hand. We both knew this wasn't just stress. We both knew our love story was about to take a turn we weren't prepared for. But we faced it together. Like we always had. Like we always would. The appointment with the neurologist was scheduled a week later. That week felt like floating in a fog. Everything was in slow motion, muted and surreal. We tried to keep things normal, or at least act like we were. Pancakes were still made, jazz still played, Eli still left those little love notes. But beneath every smile, every conversation, there was a silent, heavy dread. On the morning of the appointment, Eli held my hand the entire way there. Neither of us spoke much in the car. We didn't need to. The fear hung in the air like thick humidity, clinging to our skin, clouding our thoughts. We waited in the specialist's office for nearly an hour. And then came the words that shattered everything. "Glioblastoma multiforme." I blinked. "Can you say that again?" The doctor was a kind-eyed woman who looked like she'd given this kind of news too many times before. She didn't blink, didn't flinch. "It's a rare and aggressive form of brain cancer. We found a tumor in Eli's frontal lobe." I felt my stomach drop. The air left the room. Eli's hand squeezed mine, but his face didn't change. He sat so still, so quiet, like he'd known, deep down, that it would be something like this. "What does that mean?" I asked, my voice barely a whisper. She looked at us both. "We'll need to start treatment immediately. Surgery, radiation, and chemotherapy. The tumor is operable, but it's fast-growing. This is something we need to move on quickly." I looked at Eli. His eyes were glassy, but he didn't cry. He simply nodded. "When do we start?" he asked. The next few months became a blur of hospitals, waiting rooms, and long nights. I learned medical terms I never wanted to know. I watched nurses come and go with sympathetic smiles. I watched my love fight harder than I'd ever seen anyone fight. The surgery came first. They removed what they could, and Eli came out of it disoriented but smiling. "I'm still here," he whispered to me, reaching for my hand. "That's got to mean something, right?" I nodded, but the lump in my throat never left. Radiation started next. Then chemo. His body began to change. He lost weight, lost his appetite. His once sharp memory became cloudy. He slept more. He smiled less. But through it all, he still left me notes, shaky handwriting on sticky notes. "I'm so lucky to love you. Thank you for not running. You're still the best thing in my life." Every one of them destroyed me. It was December when Eli told me he wanted to see his parents. "You sure?" I asked. "I mean, after everything." He nodded slowly. "I don't want to die with this hanging over me." I didn't argue. I made the call for him. They arrived on a cold Sunday afternoon. His mother looked older, more worn down. His father had gray in his beard and guilt written all over his face. They stepped into the apartment like strangers. Eli sat on the couch, wrapped in a blanket, pale but trying to smile. There was an awkward silence before his mother knelt in front of him and took his hand. "I'm sorry," she said, voice cracking. "I'm so sorry." Eli's eyes welled up. "Why did you leave me?" he asked, softly. "I needed you. I was just a kid." His father stepped forward, eyes wet. "Because I was afraid. Because I didn't understand. And because I was too damn proud to admit I was wrong." The room filled with tears. They hugged. All three of them. And I stood in the corner, holding back my own, knowing how much this moment meant, that Christmas was one of the most beautiful and heartbreaking days of my life. We kept it small, just me, Eli, his parents, and our closest friends. Eli sat in his favorite chair, wearing a red sweater I'd bought him, and laughed as everyone opened presents. He was weak, his hands shaking, his skin pale, but his spirit. It was burning. He gave me a book, a first edition of a novel we read together the week we met. Inside was a note. "If this life is a book, then you were my favorite chapter." I cried right there, in front of everyone. He just smiled. January came with a cruel sharpness. Eli's health began to decline faster than we'd expected. The doctors had warned us, glioblastoma is relentless, but nothing prepares you for watching the person you love fade. He had more seizures. He forgot things, simple things like my name, where we were, even what year it was. But then, out of nowhere, we had one good day. Just one. It was sunny. Cold, but bright. I bundled him up and wheeled him out to the park we used to walk in. We sat under our favorite tree. He looked around, his eyes clear for the first time in weeks. "You remember this place?" I asked. He nodded. "This is where I knew I loved you." My chest ached. "You said that to me a year ago." "Because it's still true." He reached for my hand. His grip was weak, but it was there. "I'm not afraid," he said. I looked at him, confused. Afraid of what? Of what comes next. I bit my lip. "I am." He looked at me with so much love it broke something in me. "Then I'll wait for you," he said softly. "Wherever I go, I'll wait." It happened quietly. He had slipped into a coma 2 days before. The doctor said it could be hours, maybe a few days. I didn't leave his side. I held his hand. I played our songs. I read him our favorite poems. And then, one night, as the snow fell silently outside the hospital window, Eli exhaled one last time. I felt it. I felt the room grow still, heavy, and sacred. The nurses came in, gentle and quiet. I sat there, holding him, long after the machine stopped beeping. I didn't want to let go. I couldn't. He was everything. He still is. The weeks after were a blur. People called. People visited. People said things like, "He's in a better place," and, "At least he's not suffering." None of it helped. What helped were the moments I felt him, in the quiet, in the wind, in the smell of his cologne on our sheets. What helped was reading his notes, every single one of them. I kept them in a box, but I didn't need to. I had them memorized. There was one he wrote the day after he was diagnosed. I found it tucked in the back of his sketchbook. "If I go, don't forget, you were the light. You were the reason I made it this far. Love again." Live loud. And when you miss me, just look up, I'll be the stars cheering for you. It's been 6 months. I still talk to him sometimes, in the quiet moments, in the space between sleep and waking. I still make pancakes on Sundays. I still play his records. And every time I see a leaf fall from a tree, I think of him, how he called autumn God's goodbye kiss. I'm learning how to live without him. But I'll never stop carrying him. He was my person. My home. My storm and my calm. And though he's gone, he left a love so loud, so bright, it echoes in every part of me. Forever, grief is strange. It doesn't come in a straight line. It doesn't knock politely. It crashes through your door, uninvited, and stays as long as it wants. Some days, it whispers. Other days, it screams. But it always finds a way to be heard. After Eli's passing, I found myself existing in a world that didn't make sense anymore. His toothbrush was still in the holder. His jacket still hung by the door. His slippers were exactly where he'd left them, beside the couch, slightly askew, like he'd just stepped out for a moment. Only, he wasn't coming back. Eli had always said he didn't want a traditional funeral. I wanted to feel like a celebration, not a mourning, he told me once while lying beside me on the couch, tracing circles on my hand. So I tried. We held a memorial in the park, the same one we visited that last good day. The same tree, the same sun filtering through branches. I read one of his favorite poems aloud, the one that made him cry every time. Love is not love. Which alters when it alteration finds. Or bends with the remover to remove. People came. Friends. Former co-workers. Even a few of the kids from the shelter he used to donate to anonymously. His parents sat in the front row, holding hands, tears quietly streaming down their faces. No pews. No formalities. Just music, stories, laughter through tears. We played his favorite records, soft jazz and indie acoustic. Someone brought cupcakes because Eli would have wanted something sweet. I watched a little girl twirl in the grass, and for a brief moment, I could almost feel him sitting next to me, saying, "See. It's not goodbye. It's just, see you later." It was 2 weeks later. I was doing laundry. Simple, ordinary, forgettable task. I pulled a sweater from the basket, his sweater. The navy one with elbow patches. The one he wore on our second date. I hadn't washed it since. I held it to my face and just collapsed. Right there, on the laundry room floor, crying so hard I couldn't breathe. I clutched the fabric, begging the universe to give him back, just for one more hour. One more minute. Grief ambushed me in the quiet, in the mundane. In coffee shops where I'd look for his face. In bookstores where I still checked the fiction section for new releases he'd have loved. In my dreams, where he still smiled, whole and alive, Eli was always a planner. A week after the funeral, I received a package in the mail. It was from him. Inside was a bundle of letters. 15 of them. Each one labeled with moments, open when you're angry. Open when you can't sleep. Open on your birthday. Open when you meet someone new. I couldn't open them right away. It felt like touching a wound still bleeding. But one night, when the silence was too loud and the bed felt too big, I picked one. Open when you miss me. His handwriting was shaky, cancer had stolen even that from him, but it was still Eli. Hey, love. If you're reading this, it means I'm gone. And God, I hate that. I hate leaving you. I hate the idea of you hurting. But I need you to promise me something. Keep living. Laugh too loud. Sing off key in the car. Kiss someone when it feels right. Dance barefoot in the kitchen. And when you miss me, really miss me, look up. I'm the star you think is winking. I'm the breeze that smells like spring. I'm the extra scoop of whipped cream you didn't order but got anyway. I'm everywhere love exists. Always. Eli. I wept so hard the letter blurred. But it felt like a lifeline. Like he was still holding me through the ink. Grief doesn't ask for your permission to wreck you, but healing, that takes effort. I started therapy. It took me 3 sessions before I could even say his name without choking up. My therapist, Maria, just nodded, gently nudging me toward memories that hurt and healed at the same time. I also started running. I know, it sounds cliché, but moving helped. On long runs, I'd pretend Eli was pacing beside me, teasing me for my terrible stamina. "You're such a drama queen," he'd say with that sly smile. "It's just a hill." I began volunteering at the same shelter he used to support. I taught art classes to kids on Saturdays. It gave me purpose. It gave me a reason to get out of bed on the days I didn't want to. It gave me a way to carry him forward. One night in March, I received a message on Instagram. It was from someone named Jonah. "Hi. You don't know me, but I met Eli years ago. I was homeless and addicted. He gave me $20, a meal, and a speech I'll never forget. He told me I mattered. That someone loved me even if they didn't know it yet. I've been sober for 3 years now. I run a halfway house in Cleveland. I just wanted you to know, he changed my life. And I'm trying to do the same for others. Thank you for loving him." I sat there, stunned. Even in death, Eli was still saving people. Still reminding me that love doesn't die with the body. It spreads. It echoes. On the 1-year anniversary of his passing, I returned to the park. I brought the same sweater. A bottle of ginger ale, his favorite. And all the letters I hadn't opened yet. I sat under our tree. Birds chirped. A breeze moved gently through the branches. And for the first time in a long time, I didn't cry. I smiled. "I miss you," I whispered. "But I'm okay." I opened the last letter. Open when you're ready to let go. Letting go doesn't mean forgetting. It doesn't mean replacing. It just means allowing your heart to beat without breaking every time you think of me. If you found love again, I'm proud of you. If you haven't, I'm still proud. You gave me everything. You were my family when I had none. You were my reason to fight, and my peace when I couldn't anymore. Don't let guilt steal the rest of your life. Live big. Love loud. And if someday we meet again, I'll be the one running toward you. I haven't fallen in love again yet. And maybe I won't for a while. Or maybe tomorrow I'll meet someone who makes me laugh in the same dumb way Eli did. But I know now that I can carry him with me, without being chained to the pain. Because that's what he would have wanted. Because love like his doesn't end, it transforms. It becomes the strength you didn't know you had. The courage to keep going. The reminder that your heart can break and still beat strong. So I get up. I keep going. I love him still. And I live, because that's the only way to honor someone who taught me what love really means. And every time I look up at the stars, I smile. Because I know Eli is still cheering for me.